Tag, and I too want to thank all of you, especially all of you who have been here all day long and are sticking around for what I think will be really the gem of today, which is wrapping it all up and kind of summarizing what we think we've learned. I really have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Matthew Dunn. Matthew actually served on our TAG board, so he's a real friend of TAG, obviously, as many people are. He is the chief explainer for a company he helped co-found in 2008, Say It Visually. And Say It Visually is a pioneering explanation agency. And as Matthew would tell you, he's been balancing kind of the arts and technology for well over 30 years. He has an MFA, and he also has the very first PhD in digital media awarded by the University of Washington in 1995. So you can see he's got right-left brain, and the perfect person to kind of end our day and help us extract and pull out the gems of what we've learned today. Matthew also is, as you've heard a number of people, a 9-year Microsoft veteran. He's a designer. He's a theater professor. He's been a corporate senior vice president and CIO. He's been a tech startup CEO. He's an inventor who holds many patents. Not that those patents are worth anything right now. But again, I hope you recognize Matthew is the perfect person to help us pull together what we've talked about and what we can take away to help each of our companies become a little bit more secure after today's summit. So thank you all, and welcome Dr. Matthew Dunn.
Thanks, Robin. Is there a wireless mic? Because you know I'm not going to stand here. So you guys exhausted? It's a lot of information, a lot of meaning packed into the day. I know. Turn it on and wait a minute, right? Yep. Sounds like it's on. Is it possible to get the lights out here so I can pace around and not stand still? So I have no idea what I was going to say when I got here this morning, and that was actually my charter, was to listen and try and wrap it all up in a neat little package. And I'm certainly not going to do complete justice to that because of the breadth of material, the breadth of points of view, and frankly, the uncertainty of the subject matter. Let me tell you a couple of stories. One, there's a pattern in history, and we're in a stage of this pattern. And I'll use probably the easiest historical example. When the compass was invented, thanks to the efforts mainly of Henry the Navigator from Portugal, all of a sudden the world got opened up because going across the ocean, later the chronometer, made that possible. And the range of the possible expanded way beyond the range of what we'd agreed on. And what happens when that happens, one of the symptoms is actually pirates. What happens when there are new opportunities that are outside of the rule set that we had before, there are always people who go, wow, I can do something. I can build something, make something, create something, new opportunities. There's really not any rules right now out there. So let's go out there. And whether it's haul up the Jolly Roger, or start putting in barbed wire and staking your claim on the range because no one had said that you didn't own it or whatever, there are people who will move out there always into those new frontiers. Here's the funny thing about the pattern, though. Later, the ones who are really successful at that start asking for rules and structure. Why? Because they spent most of their life building something out of nothing, something out of this sort of formless, rule-free place, and they don't want to see it go away. So, the internet, probably the biggest infrastructure piece under this whole discussion we've been having today. If you haven't read Code 2.0 by Lawrence Lessig, I really, really recommend that, by the way. And the reason I pull that book in is to say this. The internet wasn't designed to do what we've got it doing now. But there are a lot of value judgments and frankly, a lot of cultural points of view baked into the protocols and the code and the decisions and the way that infrastructure works. I mean, it was built to be hackable, agreed? It was built to be constantly modified. And this layer and that layer don't know what the other one contains, which is like a recipe for, oh my God, how do we lock the door? Because we don't know what's coming in the door, right? There's a value judgment in coding that way. That's Lessig's main point in Code 2.0. Now it's becoming this global infrastructure, and I'm going to hook this back to compasses and Henry the Navigator. This is the biggest territory I think we've opened up. I don't think we've ever, the human race, I don't think we've ever tackled this kind of, wow, no rules, what are we doing? And you see the enormous opportunities. You see the pioneers who've jumped out and said, I can make something here. And they don't necessarily play by the rules that we think of culturally, but so what? That's what we've always done. Henry Morgan, pirate Henry Morgan, ended up being governor of Jamaica. He wanted rules later on to help make something out of this empire. So we're in this very uncertain state with this incredibly immature, not yet organized and structured and predictable, call it a landscape if you want, that we're carrying in our pockets, that we've got on our desktops, that we've built our companies around. Is it any surprise, honestly, is it any surprise that this is really hard? Michael Cockrell made that great point this morning about, so we're not paying the tax. We haven't been paying the tax on technology, the tax on IT. Well put. I think it's even bigger than that. I mean, there's an element of magic and kind of, it's amazing what we can do, whether it's amazing what we can do with a computer on our desk or with a phone in our pocket. And we're all going to grab that capability and try and get the advantage out of it. Now we're starting to say, geez, there's some consequences to it, right? I can't control it as much as I thought. So one of the sort of recurrent themes, I think, that I heard in the course of the day, the numbers of the breakout sessions told me a whole bunch. It's like IT session, big room, packed. CEO session, 15 people around a table up there. So I'm thinking this audience sort of skews towards the technical. Biggest takeaway I've got from this is that this is not an IT problem. IT is part of the problem set, part of the solution set. But if you come away from this and you go back to your boss, if you're in the IT or tech part of the company, and go back and say, we can solve security problems with more technology, don't do that. One, you won't. You won't solve it perfectly. If you say you've solved it perfectly, you're setting yourself up for probably getting fired. Two, they're going to leave that responsibility with you. And my point is that they can't leave that responsibility entirely with you, because this is not just a technology problem. Mark Anderson's main point about protecting the crown jewels, it's not a technical issue, really, right? That's an organizational, what is it that matters to us? Should we steward and safeguard that? Yes. And if you haven't done, that's not a technology issue, but you probably would want to do that, right? Let me backtrack to the wide open seas thing again for a second. The perceived conflict between our national model and what we're doing and other national models and what they're doing, it's hard not to see it from our point of view, right? True blue American, right? We shouldn't be surprised that there are conflicting models, and calling the other one wrong is only from this vantage point that we can call it wrong. I mean, I'm guessing if I grew up in China, I would say, we're trying to improve things. We're not playing by the same set of rules you do. You don't play by the same set of rules we do. Who's to say that you're right and we're wrong, right? It's a hard thing. It's It's a hard thing. It's got tinges of unpleasant to it. But it really shouldn't be a surprise. There were nations formed out of the Jolly Rogers and the new territory, and they didn't play by the same rules. Arguably, we're one of those, by the way. Right? So, Mark's point about the crown jewels and your core IP and your core knowledge isn't a technical one. So what I want to say to my brethren in the IT and tech world, don't own this whole thing, because it's not just a technical issue. And frankly, it's so complicated, you're not going to solve it. You're not going to make your organization 100% secure, no matter how many conferences you go to. Does that mean you shouldn't be asking for budget, resources, backing, et cetera, to do that? Of course you should be asking for that. I mean, I actually was kind of going, ooh, we don't pay quite enough attention to our security processes, procedures, and technologies in my company. So will I mend our ways somewhat? Yeah, absolutely. Is that going to be our biggest expenditure? No, because I don't think we could lock it down perfectly, and I'm willing to accept the risk-reward balance there. For the CEOs and the business leaders, I'd put a different spin on it, a couple of different perspectives on it. I think your most important job in relation to what we've called cybersecurity today is actually culture and culture engineering. If you're not changing your own mind and starting to change the mind of the people at your company about what you're responsible for and what level of risk you're willing to tolerate, all the technical things won't actually do the job. I mean, one, you're more likely to get socially engineered than technically hacked. You are. And culture and the mindset the people in your company have is about the best defense you can have against that. My wife, probably to her chagrin, is really like almost a technophobe. I don't know what she's doing with me sometimes. But it's actually a really healthy thing to have someone with her degree of skepticism about things. I mean, she gets an email that's a phishing attack. Boy, good luck. They're never going to get her, because she's like, what is this? I hate it. She's got a great attitude, right? So in a funny way, the household is very cyber secure because her attitude is, I don't believe it. It's too good to be true. I'm not going to open it. I'm not going to file attachments and all that other stuff, right? So that culture in the household is actually effective. We're probably not going to get socially engineered out of credit card numbers or something like that. Doesn't mean we won't get hacked, but for social engineering, the culture works. So if you're a CEO, you need to be working on this, and you actually need to believe it yourself. If you work for a CEO, I would urge you not to go back and start talking about budgets and technology solutions first. Doesn't mean you won't get to that stuff. But if you can't get your CEO, management, whatever, to hear a story and to understand a story about the business risk, the business cost that this IT tax has brought in the door, then you'll just be talking about Band-Aids. And I say story quite deliberately. I suspect the best way to get out of the technical domain and say blah, 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 network vulnerability is to say, boss, what if this document and that spec and this blueprint landed in the hands of a company with these capabilities, right? Just walk me through the narrative. What would that do to our business? Help them understand the business set of issues for things like data leaking or key IP and crown jewels going out the door, and then say, I didn't make this, right? I didn't invent the internet. We've adopted it for the advantages, but we're taking on the consequences of it wasn't engineered to be everything we want it to be. And I'll help you technically as best I can, but you have to actually buy that there's some risk in it and start working on the culture and the resources to address those risks. Or I'm just running around patching holes in the boat in which something still may happen. I mean, it really is business risk issue first, technical issues secondarily. I'm going to get the agenda. There were a few things I wanted to seize from the rest of the day. government, this was interesting. I was sitting in a couple of different spots, and we have a very interesting sort of mindset about the role of government in this whole technology puzzle. Like, government wants okay, right? And I said to Agnes, she had to leave, but I actually said to her, it's interesting. I don't expect you to play a role in cyber defense for my company. I do expect you to play a role, you government, abstractly speaking. I don't maintain a navy, right? So I expect you guys to play a role in coastal defense. I expect you guys to keep the roads paved. I actually, surprisingly, don't expect you to play a role in this particular infrastructure. Why? We didn't design this thing to do what we've got it doing. And nobody really owns it, which is just fascinating and bizarre, and we're stuck with it, and I don't think it's going to go away. So we're going to have a different role for government there. Yes?
And it was interesting what she said.
What was?
She said, we're involved, though,
Yeah.
because we connect.
We're involved because we connect. That's right.
The government's job is to protect themselves from us.
Yeah.
And us to protect ourselves from them.
Yeah, yeah.
I found that very interesting.
That's a very different footing, though, isn't it? It's a very, very different footing. And that's part of this new frontier thing that we're going, what the heck, right? That's a really different relationship. What, by the way, that historical pattern, right, of frontiers and pioneers who later become barons who start asking, what tends to happen over time, and I don't know if this will actually unfold well in our lifetimes, but I suspect it will happen over time, is we'll start building the institutions and structures to bring some order to this strange cyber frontier that we're all living in right now. I honestly don't think it'll be very visible for a while. Here's the symptom, okay? Michael Cockrell talked about insurance and the fact that you can't get a cyber insurance policy right now. And he mentioned Lloyd's of London, didn't he? You know when Lloyd's of London was created? In the era of piracy. They were insuring ships sailing out there into the vast blue ocean against piracy. So there you've got an institution born out of, surviving to this day, born out of that unknown that in a sense brought some order and structure. Well, if you want to send a ship full of X, you'll pay us some money, and if it gets pirated, we'll make good on it. That's some structure to the wilderness. We'll probably start doing some of that. I honestly don't know what it's going to look like, but I think we'll start doing some of that. One of the risks, I came to this conclusion when I was thinking about what the heck I was going to do when I was winging it. And I said this to my wife. I said, one of the possible consequences, and I hate to say this intellectually, one of the possible consequences is that we'll balkanize the net. If you think about it logically, that's one of the possible consequences. If we can't reconcile the different operational, what Mark Anderson called business models of the nation states, one thing we could do is to say, well, we'll stop swapping information with each other quite so freely because we actually can't afford the hole in the side of our boat, and we really want to keep our boat floating. Intellectually, I would hate to see that happen. Technically, I honestly don't know if it's possible, but it is a logical consequence. And I'll give you an example of that's already sort of going on. You ever hear the Great Firewall? Tell me that's not a balkanization of the net. Great Firewall, you don't get the same traffic into China as a nation that you get here. There's actually a deliberate, we want this traffic but not that traffic, and that's the way they've chosen to use that particular technology infrastructure. So that could happen. Be kind of dire. We hate to see it happen. And if we tried to do that, we'd be dealing with those policy decisions made by mostly grad school students in designing internet protocols. They were making value judgment calls in saying what a protocol could do. And unwinding that's going to be really, really tricky if we try to unwind it. Very, very tricky. Back to government again for a second. I don't think we're necessarily doing the job we need to in terms of bringing up K through 12 type kids who are ready for this. And I was delighted to hear, I was a teacher once, I was delighted to hear the amount of discussion and attention to K-12 education. I don't know what it's going to look like to do that well, but I do think we're sort of ready to start taking the leap and start educating kids differently, and not just turn them loose. Right? It's not just turn them loose and say go code something, but it's raise them as digital natives with this education system designed for digital natives, because that's what they are, rather than one that sort of tries to work and they're mostly working around it. All about the money. Outrunning the bear. Yes, okay. So this is closing point, more or less. One of the things that we do in being in the explanation business is a lot of surprisingly careful language engineering. Getting understanding across isn't just a question of throwing more words at someone. In fact, that usually has the opposite effect. And the vocabulary we use for this set of problems called cybersecurity, I think I'd suggest to you that it's not necessarily the job we want it to do. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One, cybersecurity. It's not just a cyber issue. It's not just a technical issue. Right? So if you go back and go, yada, 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 just talk about cybersecurity, it's still going to be an IT job, and you can't patch all of the holes, technically. So you need to talk in terms of, it's business risk, it's operating on the net, it's not just technical issues, it's a whole set of business issues, and don't just use the label cybersecurity, because one of the things that IT folks are guilty of is using too many technical terms, and the business guys just glaze over and go, it's an IT problem. They'll deal with it. They just want more money for software or something like that. So think carefully about the overarching choice of term. And I don't necessarily know what the term is, but I know cybersecurity tends to create a little socket in my head that says technical issue, and this isn't just a set of technical issues. Second one, attacks and hackers. Okay? It's a vivid narrative, but it's actually not particularly accurate. If Agnes could put up a slide saying she's up to 600 million attacks a year? A month. Okay, big number. That's not that many individuals sitting down and doing a deliberate, this one, it's not 600,000 individuals, there's a lot of automation. I got bit in the butt by this. We had a Joomla website that it just kind of got auto-corrupted and was pointing people to all sorts of strange places, and I had to basically dispose of it, throw it away, kill it, and start over, which was a lot of work. So the constant attack, if you start talking hackers and attacks, you've got this mental narrative of deliberateness by another human being that I don't think is actually accurate, statistically or technically. It's actually more, there's a constant set of machinery knocking on doors and looking for known vulnerabilities and doing stuff, and you've got to assume, essentially, that you're always under cyber attack, and there I fell into my own linguistic trap. You see what I'm saying? If you just talk in terms of hackers and attacks, you start setting up this, well, maybe we can solve this by filling in hole X. You actually can't. You can't. There will be too many of them. They'll be too diverse. The young man from the program who did that incredible in-depth SSL demo, he basically said, I got to spend 2 hours every morning reading about the new stuff, just keeping up. So this is highly automated. It's more, this is the new normal, right? If you're accepting the genie and saying we want the advantage of digital, or we have to use this because this is where our customers are, how our business functions, or something like that, assuming that you're just guarding against deliberate something by an individual somewhere isn't quite an accurate mental picture, and I think it tends to point your countering activities in not a sufficiently broad direction, because you start thinking you're going to plug the holes, which you're not. Christopher Nolan, director of the 3 Batman movies and Inception, has a new movie out. It's called Interstellar. That's what it's called. When the screenplay for that was done, the only way anyone who was going to be involved in the film could read the screenplay was to go to a locked room and read the paper screenplay. It didn't exist in digital form. That's his crown jewels. He didn't want it leaking. He didn't want it out there. So he made a very deliberate value judgment, said, not a digital asset. You want to read the screenplay? Come, check in, no smartphones, no nothing in the room. You can sit and read it, and then you can leave, and you're not taking it with you, period. Quentin Tarantino, by contrast, is chapped as heck because his latest screenplay got leaked before he was even ready to go to production, right? And it sounds extreme, but why is it that every valuable document is sitting on a drive somewhere? It's habit, right? We sort of lazy our way out of it. Well, I might have to email it to someone, so I'll leave it sitting. Ooh, bad decision, right? So don't leave that out of the realm of the possible as well. Like, if it's really that valuable, does it have to be sitting in bits and bytes on a disk that's plugged into the big thing? I mean, if you've got a computer on your desktop that's connected to the internet, that's cloud computing, kids. Sorry, bad news, but it's all cloud computing these days. So that was Christopher Nolan. That's a good story to tee up with your CEO about. We don't have to do everything this way just because we're in the habit of doing most things this way. If it's really that valuable, maybe we ought to take it off and set it on a shelf and lock it up and not let people in to get to it. Mea culpa, I haven't done that with anything, but it seems like a good idea, actually. So, last note, it's fantastic to see how TAG has evolved to the point of pulling this many people into a room and putting on such a substantive and thought-provoking and really meaty, right? Meaty, oh man, we're going to do things differently. Thank you very much for this day. It's fantastic to see how well it's done, to see how many people turned out, and to see the caliber of the folks who informed us about all sorts of things this morning. So that's kind of my summary of the day. It's terrific to be back and see you all, and I wish you good luck in the new frontier.
Thank you, Matt. So we have a birthday to celebrate together on November 21st, don't we? So the next TAG event is the 25th anniversary of the internet.
Yes.
And many of the things that Matthew was just speaking of, we're going to be talking about there at our monthly luncheon. So
we'll continue this discussion.
We'll continue, and there will be cake. So thank you. This has been a really fantastic day, and I really appreciate all the participation and the hard work that's gone in by so many different people involved. When we were talking about this conference, we were pretty intentional about our language. We chose the word risk because this is something that every level in an organization needs to take on. It's not a matter that our IT departments can tackle alone. We need to come around this wild frontier together. A lot of energy, I'm going to keep hearkening back to this, and there's a reason for it, because there is, in fact, a prize, and we all like prizes, wherever Pat is. Is she in here? Hi. So we have scorecards. These scorecards are assembled from a lot of different sources that are far more expert at this than I am. And we've gotten a lot of feedback, and these are pretty useful trigger thoughts. So who finished their scorecard? Anyone? Man. We wanted to, so we have a fun reward. I was hoping that some organization would do a scorecard with a couple of different divisions in their organization, but maybe you'll have to report back into us. But what other things did we vote on, Pat? So if you don't yet know, do we have raised hands? Awesome, okay. So if you don't yet know Pat is the event manager and catering and sales manager at the Lakeway. Really super fun person. If you need rays of sunshine, just call Pat. So tomorrow night they have a Halloween party. So we have tickets for the Halloween party. Just came in with our theme. So I saw you first up there. You're the winner. But I'd encourage you. I encourage you all to take the time and do the homework, because you spent a lot of time and energy with each other, caring for each other, nurturing, and going through these scorecard concepts together. So thank you all for your time in doing those, and thanks, Pat, for the. Yeah. Oh, did you see it? Did you see another? Was there another person that did homework?
Anybody else?
I think we could give them to emergency reporting. I know they did a lot of homework.
Well, let me tell you what this prize is, so maybe you'll get more excited. We have a Halloween party that is tomorrow night, Halloween, and you do need to have costume, and we have a prize for costume, so you can make some money on it if you have a good costume. And so what I'm giving to you today is 2 tickets to this party. That's going to be really fun, live music, beverages, all these kind of great things. And on top of that, we have 2 martinis at Poppy. So even if you can't make it to the Halloween party, you can go have a couple martinis on us. But I hope you'll come to the Halloween party. So I have this for 2 people.
Thank you. So we hope that we didn't make today too scary and too Halloweeny, but we, forward-looking risk, all together looking at this opportunity as an organization. And I really want to thank our sponsors again. As a nonprofit, member-driven organization, we're here to serve the tech community. And everything that we do is made possible by our members and our sponsoring members. And I just, not only do the sponsorship participation, does it help run our programs, it also speaks really loudly to your commitment to your local tech partners. So I just appreciate that vote very, very deeply that organizations are making. So for this event, I want to thank Red Rock, who was our gold sponsor, Comcast and Alpha Technologies, Rice Insurance, VSH, Fiber Cloud, and we have Heritage Bank is going to do the reception afterwards, and Skagit Bank was also involved, and the Port of Bellingham, and Varvid, who you heard from earlier. And I want to very, very deeply thank the extraordinary amount of effort that went into putting this event together by Whatcom. Stephanie's back there with a couple of other people from facilities, and wow, I've been really wowed by the heart that you all have put into this effort. So it really speaks to the opportunity to have this be a true center for excellence. Beautiful new lab facilities that we're going to have tours available for during the reception. We'll be meeting out in Baker Hall. Also, all of our speakers have just done a terrific job, and our board of directors is just a fantastic group who hopefully you've been able to meet a number of the people. If you have not yet, please join with us at the reception afterwards. So thank you all so much for your time today. It's been really, truly fantastic. We have a reception behind the curtain, and we're going to be having tours of the new awesome computing center that Whatcom has that just opened up, a week ago, Corinne? Okay, sorry, middle of September. Very wonderful facility. Maybe you'll show the history of computing over there. Maybe. She has this really fun wall, of computers over time that it's cool to see and cool to have you introduce them. So thank you all for today.